Welcome back to the deep dive. You know how we do it. We sift through all the material, articles, interviews, the whole lot, and boil it down so you get the essential insights fast. Today we are diving deep into an artist who I think really captures so much about the modern American experience, especially its contrasts. We're talking about the incredible Kentucky singer-songwriter S.G. Goodman.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Our sources really paint her as more than just a musician. She's almost like a cultural synthesizer, maybe?
Yeah.
A bridge builder.
Yeah.
We've got a pretty comprehensive set of materials here. Her life story, career path, how critics have responded. And our goal today really is to figure out how this unique mix,
Yeah.
deep rural Southern roots plus a serious education and philosophy created this voice that speaks so clearly to America's divides, especially that urban-rural tension.
And you kind of have to start right there, don't you, with that central contrast, that paradox, because it feels like the engine driving her art. I mean, she's this critically lauded figure in Americana folk rock, but where does she come from? Hickman, Kentucky. Started singing in the Southern Baptist Church. That's deep tradition, faith, rural life, all baked in.
Right.
But then she goes off to university to study philosophy, and now she's writing these incredibly sharp songs about things like the opioid crisis. It's just, a fascinating clash of worlds.
It really is. It's like the traditional South meeting this analytical, questioning mind. Goodman, who's 36 now in October 2025, she's not just carrying on a tradition. She's using the language of Americana, but she's kind of interrogating it too. She offers this really modern, informed voice in a genre that can sometimes lean towards, romanticizing the past. She gets the Southern story from the inside, definitely. But she also has that philosophical training to sort of dissect where things might be broken.
Right, to see the systems maybe.
Exactly.
So to really understand that synthesis, we have to start at the beginning. We need to ground ourselves in her geography because it seems absolutely fundamental to her identity and, her sound follows from that.
For sure.
She grew up way down in the southwestern corner of Kentucky in Hickman, and now she lives a bit further northeast in Murray.
And those places are crucial. Hickman's right there by the Mississippi River. Feels pretty remote sometimes, even from the rest of Kentucky. That whole experience, the farming, the small town life, it just anchors her music.
Yeah.
You look at how people write about her work, and they constantly point back to this deep connection to the place, the Southern narratives. There's this sense that we need authentic voices from these areas that often get, stereotyped or misunderstood.
And right at the heart of that early life, you've got farming and faith. Her dad was a farmer, still is. That connection to the land, the cycles, the hard work, that's a whole worldview right there.
Definitely. And alongside that agricultural rhythm, there was the rhythm of faith. The sources really stress how central the Southern Baptist Church was, attending church 3 times a week with her family. I mean, 3 times a week, that's not just showing up on Sunday.
No, that's serious commitment.
It's total immersion, right, in the community, the rituals, and importantly, that specific kind of vocal performance environment. That's really where she started performing. Probably shaped her voice, her sense of communal storytelling.
It's that classic foundation, like you said. But what's also really interesting about that childhood is how you have that structure 3 times a week church side by side with these other details that suggest this, like incredible early independence.
Yeah.
Well, okay, she started playing rhythm guitar around 15. That makes sense for a musician.
Right, pretty standard.
But then there's this amazing detail. She apparently started driving much, much earlier, like age 7.
Age 7. Wow. Okay, that's a detail you remember.
Right.
That's kind of a perfect little anecdote, isn't it? Just instantly paints a picture of maybe rural pragmatism.
The sources are clear. It was definitely illegal in Kentucky.
But it suggests this environment where, the practical needs of farm life, getting around on back roads, maybe just outweighed the official rules sometimes.
I think we should pause on that for a second because it says so much about that internal tension, maybe.
How so?
Well, you have this kid steeped in the moral framework of the Southern Baptist Church 3 times a week, all about rule structure.
Right.
But at the same time, she's out there learning independence, maybe breaking the law just out of sheer necessity on the farm.
That's a great point. It's almost like the origin story for the artist who can critique the system, but still clearly love the people in it. That early independence, driving at 7, I mean, that fosters a kind of self-reliance that must feed into her art later.
Yeah, you'd think so.
She's not waiting for permission, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's driving a truck or writing a song that tells a hard truth, it sets up this duality. Structure and freedom, tradition, and just doing what needs to be done.
And then those tensions start to really combine or maybe get processed with the philosophical turn. Around 2007, she moves to Murray, goes to Murray State University. And she specifically chooses to study philosophy. That feels like a key moment. Experience meets analysis.
This is maybe the most critical piece for understanding her depth, I think.
Yeah.
That philosophy degree isn't just like an interesting factoid. It's the toolkit.
Yeah.
It's what separates her, perhaps, from a lot of other songwriters working in similar veins.
Okay, explain that. Why philosophy specifically? Why not, say, political science or sociology if she's interested in social issues?
That's a really good question. Because philosophy, especially areas like ethics or epistemology, how we know what we know, it trains you to spot and question the underlying assumptions. Political science or sociology might describe the structures, how things are. Philosophy asks why they are that way, questions the values, defines the terms, builds the moral arguments.
Right.
So that training lets her go beyond just, reporting on the opioid crisis or the rural-urban gap. It lets her analyze the root causes, the sort of moral questions, the economic factors, the failures maybe in community or government.
So she's not just a storyteller, she's a critic using music as her medium. She's getting at the whys.
Exactly. When she tackles these tough subjects, she's bringing the heart of someone who lived it, for sure, but also the brain of someone trained to think systematically about complex ideas. She can handle nuance, avoid easy answers, maybe because that education pushed her to think critically.
It gives her that necessary distance, maybe, to look at her own background without just being sentimental or falling into stereotypes.
I think so, and that's maybe how she can bridge that urban-rural divide in her work. She brings this intellectual seriousness to the rural experience, forcing listeners who might dismiss that world to actually engage with the critique in the songs.
Okay, so we've got the roots, the intellectual framework. Let's talk about how the music itself developed. Before her solo career really took off, there was an important earlier chapter, right? The band, the Savage Radley.
Yeah, the Savage Radley. That was her first main musical project, started with drummer Stephen Montgomery. They put out one album, Kudzu, on a label called Slow Water Records.
Kudzu? That's quite a title for a Southern band.
Isn't it? That invasive vine that just covers everything in the South. Such a loaded, potent metaphor.
Wow.
Beautiful, but overwhelming, maybe destructive.
Wow. So even early on, she was grabbing onto these complex symbols of home.
Seems like it. And that band experience is important context. First, it shows she wasn't just an overnight sensation, right? She was working at it, honing her craft. And second, that label, Slow Water, being a more regional Kentucky label, it shows some early roots, some loyalty to the local scene.
Right. And then she moves into her solo work and starts building this signature sound. We hear it called Americana, folk, country, rock. It kind of touches all those bases.
It does.
But her technical choices, the gear, that seems really specific and important to the overall mood. Let's get into that, because this is where someone interested in how music is actually made can learn a lot.
Okay, yeah. We know she really favors Guild Starfire guitars. These are semi-hollow or hollow-body guitars, different from, say, a solid-bodied Telecaster or Les Paul that you might associate with rock or some country.
Okay.
And crucially, the sources mention she likes them specifically for their humbuckers.
All right, for the non-guitar nerds among us, what does choosing humbuckers tell us? What kind of sound is she going for there?
It tells us quite a bit, actually. So a humbucker pickup, basically it cancels out electrical hum, hence the name humbucker, which single-coil pickups can be prone to.
Right.
But sonically, the big difference is that humbuckers generally give you a fuller, thicker, kind of beefier sound. They have a higher output. Think less bright twang or sharp jangle like you might get from single coils, and more warmth, weight, maybe even a bit of grit.
Okay. So it pushes her sound away from pure folk or traditional country twang.
Exactly. It leans it more towards that rockier side of Americana. It gives the music this density, this substance, which honestly feels really appropriate for the heavy themes she often explores.
So the gear choice itself has muscle.
It does. It's a deliberate sonic texture that matches the lyrical weight. But maybe the most defining technical detail, the one that really shapes her sound, is her tuning.
Okay.
She usually plays with her guitar tuned down a whole step. That's a big deal, a significant choice.
Explain that. What does tuning down a whole step do? How does lowering the pitch change things for her and for us listeners?
Okay, so tuning down a whole step means every string goes down 2 frets, essentially. E becomes D, A becomes G, and so on. It's a dramatic shift. For the guitar itself, it lowers the string tension. This tends to make the sound darker, maybe more resonant, sometimes a bit looser or heavier. Think of a standard guitar having a bright voice. Tuning down a whole step gives it more of a baritone quality, a heavier feel.
So if the songs are already dealing with heavy topics history, social problems, the down-tuning kind of doubles down on that mood sonically, even before she sings.
Precisely. The whole sonic foundation is inherently moodier, weightier.
Yeah.
And for Goodman as a performer, this often helps her vocally. By lowering the pitch of the music behind her, it allows her voice to sit in a different register, maybe a lower, more powerful spot where she doesn't have to strain as much to get the intensity across.
Ah, that makes sense.
It contributes to that characteristic vocal delivery she has, really raw, direct, powerful. The whole package feels heavy. The tuning is heavy. The pickups are thick. The lyrics carry weight. It all works together.
And this carefully built sound comes together for her solo debut in 2020, Old Time Feeling. And that album arrived with a really significant partnership that must have given her a huge boost right away.
Yeah, that debut was a big deal, partly because it was co-produced by Jim James of My Morning Jacket.
Okay, and Jim James, he's Kentucky music royalty, basically, but also known for being pretty experimental, right?
Exactly. He's an institution in that whole Kentucky rock alternative scene, known for pushing boundaries, psychedelic sounds sometimes. Having him involved immediately signals something important.
What does it signal, you think? To the industry, to listeners?
Well, it gives her instant credibility beyond just the folk or country world. It says, hey, this songwriter is sophisticated enough to catch the ear of someone like Jim James.
Right.
His influence probably encouraged some of the more atmospheric, maybe slightly rockier elements on Old Time Feeling. It ensured the record didn't sound just like traditional folk. It had this indie rock sensibility, too. That connection was definitely key in getting her initial momentum going, pulling in listeners who might not normally check out an Americana debut.
So let's track her solo albums since then. She's been remarkably consistent, putting out 3 albums pretty quickly.
Yeah, very consistent. The debut, Old Time Feeling, was 2020. Then 2 years later, Teeth Marks came out in 2022. And then the most recent one, Planting by the Signs, just arrived June 20th, 2025. So yeah, roughly a 2-year cycle. That's a strong creative pace.
Especially considering the debut landed right in the pandemic.
Right.
Now, looking at the labels involved, there's an interesting path there, too. Teeth Marks was on Verve Forecast, which is part of a major label group known for jazz, but also some serious alternative stuff.
A significant step up in terms of label profile.
But then for the 2025 album, Planting by the Signs, she seems to have shifted again. It's listed as being released via Slow Water Records. That's the same local label from the Savage Radley days.
Right, back to the roots, in a way.
But also with distribution through 30 Tigers. What does that combination tell us?
Well, it tells us a lot about how savvy independent artists navigate the business now. Moving to Verve for Teeth Marks likely gave her a much wider reach, bigger marketing budget.
Sure.
But returning to Slow Water for the latest, while bringing in 30 Tigers for distribution, that suggests a focus on artistic control, maybe loyalty to her roots, but still needing professional reach.
And 30 Tigers, they're a big name in the independent world, right?
Oh, yeah. Arguably the name for distribution and marketing support for indie artists in Americana, folk, country. Yeah. Working with them lets her and Slow Water keep ownership and creative direction, but still get their records into stores nationwide, onto digital platforms effectively.
So it's kind of a hybrid model.
Exactly. It's smart. She keeps that local connection, that independence, but gets the horsepower she needs as a nationally recognized artist. It really fits her profile.
Yeah.
Committed to her Kentucky identity, but with national, even international ambition.
Okay, let's go back to the content of the music, the thematic depth, because this is where that philosophy background really seems to come into play. Her second album, Teeth Marks from 2022, has a track that directly confronts a major issue. Track 5, If You Were Someone I Loved. It's about the opioid crisis, right?
Yes. And that's such a devastatingly important topic, especially for Kentucky, which has been hit incredibly hard. What's striking is how she approaches it. It's not abstract or political in a lecturing way. It feels incredibly personal, intimate, and just deeply sad. The song's framing, If You Were Someone I Loved, allows her to talk about the tragedy and maybe the systemic failures around it, but through this lens of personal connection and loss.
And thinking about that through her philosophical training, she's not just reporting on addiction statistics, is she? She seems to be exploring the community breakdown, the ethical implications of it all.
I think that's exactly right. Her background might equip her to move beyond just the surface-level tragedy and ask those deeper questions about why it's happening. The human cost, yes, but also the systemic neglect, the sense of abandonment. Music becomes this way to have a communal conversation about really painful things. She's forcing listeners, both inside and outside her community, to face the devastation not just as a news headline, but as this incredibly personal potential loss, the loss of someone I loved. It makes her more of a truth teller, maybe, than just an entertainer.
That takes real courage to hold up a mirror to your own community like that.
It does. And this actually connects to something mentioned in the sources, this idea of music being healing. We can come back to that, but maybe part of the healing is in actually naming the pain, validating the experiences of people affected by the crisis, creating that shared space for grief. Maybe that's the first step towards change.
Speaking of dealing with difficult circumstances, her early touring life had a really unusual start, didn't it?
Yeah, talk about bad timing. Her debut, Old Time Feeling, the one produced by Jim James, creating all this buzz.
Yeah.
It comes out in 2020.
Right when the world shuts down. COVID. No live music.
Exactly. So she has this critically acclaimed debut, getting great reviews, but she can't do the thing that rising artists absolutely need to do. Tour, connect with audiences live, build that grassroots support show by show.
Wow, that must have been incredibly frustrating. A huge hurdle.
For sure. Which means, kind of remarkably, that her tour for her second album, Teeth Marks, in 2022, that was effectively her first proper solo headlining tour.
So the momentum from the first album had to carry itself purely on the recordings and the press for 2 whole years.
Pretty much, before she could really get out there and capitalize on it in person.
That just underlines how strong that debut album must have been. That it could sustain that level of interest and critical acclaim without the usual touring push. The music itself was doing the heavy lifting, just waiting for the stages to reopen.
And the power of that songwriting, even with those challenges, is really clear when you look at the impact of one specific song, Space and Time, from Old Time Feeling.
Ah, yeah, Space and Time. That song seems to have had a life of its own. It's the perfect example of how her writing connects across different worlds. It got covered twice, right? In really different styles.
Twice, yeah. First, you have this huge endorsement from right within her genre's heartland. Tyler Childers covered it on his album Rustin' in the Rain.
Okay, now that is significant for anyone listening who follows Americana or country. Tyler Childers is massive. He's another Kentucky artist with immense credibility and a huge following. Him choosing to cover your song, that's like a coronation almost.
It really is. It's a huge stamp of approval. It confirms the song's emotional weight, its lyrical quality. That someone like Childers, known for his own powerful, often politically charged Appalachian storytelling, saw that song as something he wanted to sing. It connects Goodman directly to that vital Kentucky songwriting lineage.
But then the song jumps tracks completely. It was also covered by Devonte Hines, who most people know as Blood Orange, and the singer Mariba. And this was for a film soundtrack.
Yeah, for the soundtrack of the 2022 movie Master Gardener, Paul Schrader film.
Wow. So that takes her work into this completely different sphere, indie film, art house sensibility. Devonte Hines' sound is nothing like Tyler Childers. It's more R&B, electronic, atmospheric.
Totally different world. So his interpretation with Mariba is going to bring out different qualities in the song, probably more texture, maybe more ambient. But clearly, the emotional core of the song still worked powerfully in the context of that film.
And that cover actually got formal recognition, didn't it?
It did. The performance by Mariba earned a nomination at the 2023 Hollywood Music and Media Awards for Original Song Independent Film. And crucially, Goodman was credited as the songwriter.
That's amazing. So the same song works for a major country star and a sophisticated indie film composer. What does that tell you?
It tells you the songwriting itself is just fundamentally strong, universal, maybe. It has this core emotional truth that resonates, whether it's presented with a country twang or an electronic soundscape. It just proves the quality of the composition itself.
So all of this, the albums, the covers, the critical buzz, it all seemed to come together in 2023. That felt like her real breakthrough year in terms of industry recognition.
Definitely. The biggest marker was winning the Emerging Artist of the Year award from the Americana Music Association. That's the official nod, the industry saying, okay, she's arrived. She's a major voice for the future of this music.
And even before that big award, she'd already gotten the nod from some pretty important gatekeepers in the folk world.
That's right. She played the Newport Folk Festival back in July 2021. Getting invited to Newport, I mean, that stage has so much history, so many legendary careers were launched or cemented there. Playing Newport that early in her solo career really solidified her place within that whole folk and Americana tradition.
Okay, so let's try and tie these threads together for the listener. You've got Jim James producing her, Tyler Childers covering her, Devonte Hines using her song in a film, she wins Emerging Artist, plays Newport. What does all that mean about S.G. Goodman and her music?
I think it means she's achieved something really rare. The synthesis we talked about, it's real. Her music is undeniably rooted in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You can't separate it from that place, that culture. But the way she processes it, the sophistication maybe brought by that philosophical lens, makes it connect way beyond those borders. She operates right at that crossroads of like deep Southern tradition and forward-thinking indie music. She can hang with an experimentalist like Jim James and be embraced by a traditionalist powerhouse like Tyler Childers. Yeah. She really is building bridges, carrying the specific story of her corner of Kentucky out to all these different audiences.
It's that combination, isn't it? Authentic voice plus artistic and intellectual rigor.
So wrapping this up, we followed this incredible path from Hickman, Kentucky, the farm, the Southern Baptist Church 3 times a week, that almost unbelievable story of driving at age 7 through to studying philosophy at Murray State, and all of that feeding into this artist who becomes the Americana Emerging Artist of the Year with these 3 really vital albums out now, Old Time Feeling, Teeth Marks, and Planting by the Sign.
But I think the big takeaway for you listening is seeing the power of synthesizing different parts of your experience rather than feeling like you have to choose one or discard another.
S.G. Goodman's strength, her depth, it comes precisely because she didn't abandon her roots when she picked up those analytical tools from philosophy. She used the critical thinking to understand and articulate her Kentucky experience in a new way. The result is art that feels both deeply authentic and really challenging.
It's that constant interplay, isn't it, between the very specific place she's from and the broad critical perspective she developed. That's what makes the music travel so well.
And that brings us right back to that core tension and this idea of healing that the sources mention. Goodman apparently believes music can be healing for the person writing it and the person listening.
Okay.
But then you look at her whole approach, choosing to tune the guitar down, creating this inherently heavier sound, tackling subjects like the opioid crisis head-on, critiquing aspects of her own community.
Right. So how does an artist who leans into difficulty, into weight, into critique, how does that process become healing? Is the healing in finding comfort, or is it found in the act of confrontation itself?
That's the big question, isn't it? What kind of philosophy is at play there? Is she suggesting that true healing actually requires facing the difficult stuff first? That maybe you can't get past the burden of history, that old-time feeling, without using those critical tools to understand why the wounds are there in the first place. It makes you think about the artist's role. Are they there just to soothe or also to diagnose, maybe even perform a kind of cultural surgery?
Powerful thought to leave things on. That's a question for you to ponder as you maybe go listen to S.G. Goodman's records after this. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you next time.